I was so surprised that when I took the break in December, I thought I was going to feel so relieved and just bask in my little YouTube vacation. When that next Sunday came along, the 1st of January, I so badly wanted to post. I had to talk myself out of posting like a YouTube short. And I'm like, Melissa, you're taking a sabbatical. You're taking a break. It shocked me because I did not realize how much I would miss you guys. Here we are, almost 3 months later. Per usual, nothing's changed. I waited to the absolute last second to make this video. We are leaving for Philly in 4.5 hours. So I thought what I would do is catch you up to speed until all my words are gone, and then we'll say farewell until next week. There's no sheets on my bed, as you can see. That's because we let our mattress breathe while we're gone. Does anybody else do that? Do you know what I'm talking about? That's what's happening here. All right, hair's out of the way, let's go. So let's start with a little bit of a heavier topic. Let's talk about grief. Starting in October at Halloween, we have said since our daughter Adora passed away, she was 2 years old, Halloween sort of marks the beginning of our grieving season. And then we've got Thanksgiving without her. We've got Christmas without her. Her birthday is January 22nd. So it's right after the holidays. And then we have her death date, which is February 1st. For me, it feels like holding my breath a bit just to get to February 2nd. And this year was a little different, a little harder for several reasons. A couple of those reasons is she would have been 12 this year. And that just feels like a special and important number. I just want to see her. Like, it feels like homesickness that will never go away as long as I'm here on earth. And that can start to feel hopeless. Now listen, I know all the right answers and I'm not looking for a right answer. What Jared and I have learned in these years of grieving, a decade of being without her, is we don't plaster on right answers just to plaster on right answers. Now, I'm going to cling to the truth of who God is and that this is temporary. That's very much in my mind. I can hold the truth of who God is and also hold my grief at the same time, or at least I've learned to do that. This year just felt more weighty. Having her gone for 10 years and then to look into the future and, if we live several more decades, that's several more decades without her, several more decades of grieving and feeling the loss of her. I felt this January and February deeply sad. That's what I felt. And what also is true, Jared and I will talk about it from time to time, even though we feel sad and we feel the pain and what feels like never-ending pain of her being gone, we're also healed. We do feel healed. This is not my word picture. It's one that's, you've probably heard it, but it is the best word picture I have to describe what it feels like to lose a child for me. And that is the loss of a limb. If I lost my left arm, like at the shoulder, you have the first stage of losing your arm where it's like, you might die. Like, you will bleed out if there isn't immediate attention brought to it. Your whole goal is stop the bleeding, stop the bleeding. It's crisis mode. You need all your people around you. You can't function on your own. It's grave danger that you're in. Those first weeks, days, and months felt like this is critical. Just stop the bleeding. Like, I don't know if I can make it through this. All hands on deck. And we're so grateful for our family and our friends and our church that surrounded us. I will never forget it, ever. The bleeding had stopped, but yet it was just like an open, raw wound that we, Jared and I, so sensed and felt and would talk about. We want this to heal well. I'm never going to have an arm again. The loss of her is like losing a limb. Healing isn't growing a new arm. Healing is making sure the thing does not get infected as a first step. And for me and my personality, that infection would have looked like avoiding it, not processing it, pushing it way down. For my husband and how he's wired, that would have looked like bitterness and like stewing in his emotions to where he couldn't get out of it. That's what an infection would look like for him. We're wired completely differently. And so we really, that first year, probably 18 months, we really worked on having this arm heal without infection, not without pain, that's for sure, but without infection. We did so much counseling. We had Adeline, she did art counseling. She had a one-on-one counselor. Jared and I had a counselor. I then had a different counselor. Actually, I had a couple counselors on my end. And then once, those first 18 months or a couple years passed by where it's like, no, the wound has now healed. Like the scab is gone. It's just like a smooth stump. Well, now what we have to do, and what we were slowly learning to do, but it really picked up then was, okay, how do I now function with just one arm? How do I live my life? How do I laugh and celebrate and go on vacations and have Christmas and work and serve and have a ministry? How do I do that without her, without my arm? But what we learned in that stage is it's possible. Not easy, but it is possible. And I remember in the very early days, wanting so badly to ask someone who had lost their child, like, give me an answer that I'm not going to be completely crushed from this grief. It feels as though it's going to crush me and I'm going to die from it. It felt smothering and terrible. But I would never ask anybody that because I was afraid their answer would be, yes, you will heal. And that felt like disrespectful to her. Like, how could I ever heal? How could I ever be okay? How could I ever laugh and joke and move on with my life without her? Like, what kind of mother does that? I don't want to be okay. Like, I desperately wanted to be okay, and I desperately did not want to be okay. But I can say now, a decade out, that we, Jared and I, have experienced real deep healing. And we also still deeply grieve the loss. The same way that if I lost an arm, I'm not going anywhere without forgetting that my arm is missing. It is always there. I'm always compensating. I'm never forgetting. Sometimes I feel like I can't deal with it as well as I can other times. And for me, how I would describe it is, I feel healed, I don't feel whole. In the same way, if I lost my arm, I could never fully be whole again. And that's how I feel. That's just a subjective feeling that I have. Without Adora, I don't feel whole. As long as I'm here on earth, I don't feel whole. But I do feel healed. So those are the things I was processing as I was away and quiet. One way that we have coped with her loss, especially on February 1st, it is the most terrible day of the year, which is her death date. We have, from the beginning, decided as a family that we would be out of town doing something to celebrate her life. And for us, it has worked. And so this year, we just did a little trip to, where did we go? Williamsburg, but we're kind of outside of, I don't know. I don't handle the details of where we are. Jared just is like, we're going here. And I'm like, okay, I'll pack my suitcase and go. And we saw this show that was just delightful. Jared picked it out because he's like, Adora would have loved this show. It was actually a Cirque du Soleil, and it was really unique, really different, unlike anything that I had ever seen before. And then we hung out wherever we were, Northern Virginia, somewhere, for the rest of the week, just Jared and I, and we just had so much fun, and it was so relaxing. We're not doing major makeup here. We're doing let's not look like a bum. So kind of like a no makeup day. What else did I want to catch you up on? Let me just tell you really quickly a little bit about my relationship with God, where I'm at with that. The last 5 years, you guys are probably really tired of hearing me talk about it, but it's been such a dark season where I have trudged through what feels like the gutter in regards to the sexual abuse that I experienced as a child and as a teenager. It was the first time that I told my family. My family imploded, and we're still broken and not whole. Overall, it's been a deep, dark season. Not that it has not had any light in it, but I have felt like I've been holding on like a tight grip on a cliff and just asking God to please save me. That is what I hate to overstate it or feel like a drama queen, but that is what it has been like for me. This year, though, in the past 8 or 9 or 10 months, I have started to feel like finally rounding the bend with some emotional things, like really being able to express my emotions. I'm getting to God in a second. Really good, deep conversations with Jared, really being vulnerable for probably the first time in our marriage. I mean, really vulnerable. With a few friends, really being vulnerable, telling them I need them. Oh, that's the worst. I was just telling a friend that he was asking, like, what's your greatest fear in friendship? I'm like, oh, that they would know that I actually need them. That's like a secret I don't want anybody to know. One, because then it makes me helpless, like a little baby. That's the most vulnerable I could ever be, is to have somebody know how much I need them. Anyway, being able to articulate these deep things like that, to say to a few friends, I'm not afraid to say that to Jared, but to a few friends, like, I really need your friendship. I don't just want your friendship, I need it. I'm a better person when I have you in my life. As I'm making more traction with humans, it's been floating around in the back of my mind of how much I have in the last 5 or 6 years really taken a step back in my relationship with God out of fear. Too long of a story here. Maybe one day we'll talk about it. But I realized in this silence that you and I have had here, as I've had some time to reflect, how much fear I have about hearing from God. Because I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid of doing the wrong thing. I'm afraid I'm hearing him wrong. I'm afraid I'm going to hurt people, because it's been a terribly rough decade. It really has been. In the last couple weeks, I feel like I've woken up from a deep sleep and I'm really hungry. Let me tell you what I mean. Have you ever taken a nap in the middle of the day and then you wake up at 4 p.m. and it's like you could eat a bear? You are so hungry. I don't know what happens. Is this just me? Do you know what I'm talking about? And you're just like, get me to the refrigerator. I don't care what it is. I give you carrots. I don't care what it is. I'm so ravenously hungry. I feel like I've awoken from a long spiritual sleep and I'm desperately hungry for him, to be with him, to experience him, to be reminded that the Holy Spirit is working and active in me and in those around me with more hope than I've had in a very long time. And that's not to say that I've not experienced God, in the last 5 years, or that it's all been terrible. That's not true. I have experienced God. I have stepped out in faith where I think I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's not been the same as I have experienced it a decade ago. It's not been the same with God. And recognizing where I have shut down parts of my heart to him based off of some hurt that I have had and that I have done to others in the last 6 or 7 years, that has made me scared. So in some ways, even though, yes, I've been praying to God, I obviously love studying the Bible, but it feels like when you've been at a distance from someone, in the early days of sort of coming back into real friendship, vulnerable, deep, close friendship, but there had been, for whatever reason, some distance. There's that awkwardness, or I feel like I'm sort of trying to figure it out, but it also feels very good and right. And I feel excited at what he's doing in me, what he's doing in my friends around me. I feel full of hope. You know what I'm gonna do? It's already been 25 minutes that I've been filming. I mean, I'll edit it down, don't worry. But I'm going to stop it here and keep talking to you, but it will post next week. Let's just spread this puppy out a bit because I've got more stuff to say to you. We got a lot to catch up on. So let's stop here. I'll see you next week.